The Galactic Council chambers on the planet Nova Prime. 3 months after humanity's apparent defeat, the story opens with the alien coalition celebrating their seemingly decisive victory over Earth. The massive council hall buzzes with excitement. As representatives from 12 different species gather around, holographic displays showing the smoking ruins of human colonies. Commander Vex of the reptilian Sark Empire raises his clawed hand, addressing the assembled crowd. Today marks the end of the human threat, he declares, his scaled face gleaming under the chamber lights. The humans had been too aggressive, too unpredictable for the established galactic order. Their rapid expansion and refusal to submit to council authority had made them enemies of every civilized species. Admiral Kryn from the Aquatic Neth Federation nods her blue-tinged head in agreement. Their primitive warships posed no real challenge to our combined fleets, she says, tentacles writhing with satisfaction. The hologram shows the final battle at Proxima Station, where human defenders had been overwhelmed by superior numbers. And Technology Dot, the insectoid Queen Tala, clicks her mandibles approvingly. The galaxy is safer without their chaotic influence, she buzzes through her translator. Her compound eyes reflect the celebration lights as she reviews casualty reports. The humans had fought desperately, but their small fleet of converted mining ships and makeshift weapons couldn't match the Council's advanced warships. As the celebration continues, junior officers present detailed reports of the campaign. Every human colony has been either destroyed or abandoned. Their homeworld Earth shows no signs of activity beyond basic life support systems. Refugee ships fleeing human space have been captured or destroyed. The threat appears completely eliminated. The council members toast with exotic beverages from their respective worlds. They discuss dividing human territory among themselves, planning new trade routes through former human space. Some species eye the mineral-rich asteroid belts that humans had been mining, while others focus on the strategic jump points that had made human expansion so rapid. However, a nagging detail troubles the intelligence officers. Long-range sensors occasionally detect strange energy signatures at the edge of known space, but these readings are dismissed as cosmic phenomena. The few surviving human prisoners refuse to speak, maintaining an eerie silence that unsettles. Their captors, Dr. Nix, a council's chief xenobiologist, presents his analysis of human psychology. They were a young species, barely a century into space travel, he explains to the gathered dignitaries. Their aggression stemmed from primitive territorial instincts. Without their industrial base, any survivors will revert to subsistence level existence. The celebration reaches its peak when the council votes unanimously to declare the human sector a restricted zone. Warning beacons will be placed to prevent accidental encounters with any remaining humans. The official record will state that humanity destroyed itself through internal conflict, erasing their existence from galactic history. As the evening progresses, stories emerge from the front lines. Veterans describe human tactics that seemed almost suicidal in their intensity. Unlike other species that surrendered when facing overwhelming odds, humans had fought to the last ship, the last soldier. Some had even rammed their vessels into Council dreadnoughts rather than retreat. Commander Vex shares intel reports about human behavior during the final stages. They evacuated their civilians first, sending them toward unknown space, he tells. The crowd. Their military stayed behind to buy time, fighting hopeless battles they couldn't win. The assembled aliens find this behavior puzzling, but ultimately irrelevant since the civilians couldn't survive without support infrastructure. The party continues late into the night cycle, with representatives from each species performing traditional victory ceremonies. The Sark perform a war dance, their scales flashing in coordinated patterns. The Neth create beautiful sonic harmonies that resonate through the water-filled sections of their embassy spaces. The insectoid delegates release pheromone clouds that convey complex, Emotional messages of triumph and satisfaction. As dawn breaks over Nova Prime, the hungover officials begin making plans for the post-human galaxy. Trade agreements are drafted, territorial boundaries redrawn, and new exploration missions planned. The Council's military forces begin standing down from high alert, with many ships returning to patrol duties or peaceful exploration missions. The celebration officially ends with the lighting of the victory flame, a tradition observed after every successful campaign against hostile species. The multicolored fire burns in the center of the council chamber, its light reflecting off the polished surfaces of 12 different architectural styles, representing the unity of the galactic community. Unknown to the celebrating aliens, deep in the outer darkness beyond their sensor range, massive shapes move silently through the void. The real human fleet built in secret shipyards, hidden in rogue planets and asteroid fields, prepares for its response. The evacuation had not been a retreat. It had been a strategic withdrawal, buying time for humanity's true war machine to awaken. The celebration was ending, but the real war was about to begin. Deep space, beyond the galactic rim, 6 months after the supposed human defeat. Admiral Jack Stone stood before the massive viewport of the battleship Defiance, watching as the last of the construction ships completed their work on the orbital fortress. The structure stretched for kilometers in every direction, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Around it, a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen waited in perfect formation. The evacuation had been the greatest deception in human history. While the Council's forces celebrated their victory over mining colonies and converted civilian vessels, the real human military had been building in secret. Hidden shipyards scattered across rogue planets and asteroid fields had worked without pause, constructing a war machine designed for one purpose: total victory. Captain Lisa Park approached the Admiral, her expression grim. "Final fleet count is complete, sir," she reported. 3,000 combat vessels of various classes, plus support ships. The numbers were staggering. Each ship represented years of secret construction. Using resources harvested from deep space mining operations the Council had never discovered. Stone nodded, his weathered face reflecting the cold light of distant stars. The plan had taken decades to implement. Even before first contact with the galactic community, human strategists had suspected they would eventually face hostile alien forces. The public fleet had been intended as a decoy, drawing attention while the real military remained hidden. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, monitoring communications from across human space. Reports flooded in from sleeper agents, embedded in alien governments, detailing Council fleet movements and strategic weaknesses. The intelligence network humanity had built over years of apparent cooperation was finally paying dividends. Commander Ross Williams, head of human intelligence, presented his findings to the senior staff. "The Council has divided our former territory among 12 species," he briefed them. "Their forces are scattered across hundreds of star systems with no central coordination. They believe we're extinct." The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. The Council's victory celebration had revealed their greatest weakness: overconfidence. Their military doctrine assumed defeated enemies would either surrender or cease to exist. The concept of a species retreating to gather strength for a devastating counterattack was foreign to their thinking. Stone studied the tactical displays showing Council fleet positions. How long before they realized their mistake? He asked. The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Once the human fleet revealed itself, there would be no turning back. This would be a war of extinction. Either humanity would reclaim its place in the galaxy, or it would die trying. Dr. Elena Rivera, the fleet's chief scientist, provided updates on the new weapon systems. "The plasma cannons can punch through Council shields like paper," she explained. Their armor plating wasn't designed to handle this level of energy output. Human engineering had taken a different path than alien technology, focusing on raw power rather than efficiency. The difference would be decisive. Council warships relied on energy shields and lightweight hulls, perfect for fighting other aliens who used similar technology. Human vessels were built like flying fortresses, with thick armor plating and weapons designed to overwhelm defensive systems through sheer destructive force. Asterisk. Throughout the hidden fleet, soldiers prepared for the coming battle. These weren't the desperate colonists who had fought the Council's invasion. These were professional warriors, trained specifically for this moment. Every Marine had lost friends or family in the initial attacks. Every pilot had sworn an oath of vengeance that would only be satisfied with complete victory. The human ships themselves were works of art and destruction. The battleships mounted guns that could level cities. The carriers held fighter squadrons trained to overwhelm enemy defenses through coordinated assault. The destroyers were built for speed and stealth, designed to strike at Council supply lines and disappear before retaliation could arrive. Stone received the final confirmation from Fleet Command. Every human settlement in the galaxy had been contacted through secret channels. Civilians were being evacuated to predetermined safe zones, while resistance cells prepared to support the incoming offensive. The coordination required had taken months of careful planning. As the briefing concluded, Stone addressed his officers. "The Council thinks they've won," he said quietly. "They've divided our worlds among themselves like pirates sharing treasure. They've forgotten the most important rule of warfare: never leave an enemy alive to seek revenge." The Admiral turned back to the viewport, watching as the massive fleet began forming into attack formations. Thousands of ships moved with precision born from months of training. When they struck, it would be with the fury of an entire species wronged. "Signal all vessels," Stone commanded. "Begin final preparations. In 72 hours, we remind the galaxy what happens when you try to exterminate humanity." In the darkness of space, the human war machine stirred to life, ready to deliver a lesson the survivors would never forget. Asterisk. The Proxima system, former human colony now occupied by Sark forces. The first indication something was wrong came from the outer sensor stations orbiting Proxima Centauri. Lieutenant Vex of the Sark Occupation Force was monitoring routine patrol reports when his displays suddenly went dark. One by one, the automated monitoring platforms stopped transmitting. Their signals cut off without distress calls or explanations. "Probably solar interference," muttered Sergeant Claw, his scaled hide reflecting the bridge lights of the Occupation Command ship Predator. The Sark had been enjoying their assignment, guarding the former human colony. The planet below provided excellent hunting grounds, and the abandoned human cities offered interesting salvage opportunities. "Commander," Tor dismissed the sensor failures with a wave of his clawed hand. Human technology was always unreliable. He growled. The Sark had spent months cataloging human equipment, finding it crude but surprisingly effective. They assumed the monitoring stations had simply suffered mechanical failures. The truth became apparent when the human fleet emerged from hyperspace like an avalanche of death and fire. 300 warships materialized simultaneously at optimal firing positions, their massive hulls dwarfing the scattered Sark vessels. The Defiance led the charge, its weapons already locked onto priority targets. Admiral Stone's voice cut through the communications static, broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Jack Stone of the Human Defense Fleet." His words echoed across the system. "You are occupying sovereign human territory. Surrender immediately, or be destroyed." Commander Tor's mandibles clicked in confusion. The humans were supposed to be extinct. His ships numbered only 30 vessels, designed for occupation duty, rather than fleet combat. The approaching human formation looked like a moving constellation of destruction. weapons ports glowing with barely contained energy. All ships, battle stations. Tor commanded, but his voice carried the tremor of a predator, suddenly finding itself prey. The Sark had never faced an enemy with technological parity, let alone the overwhelming force advantage the humans now displayed. The first salvo from the human fleet lit up space like a newborn star. Plasma cannons that had been designed in secret fired concentrated streams of superheated matter that tore through Sark shields as if they were tissue paper. The Predator shuddered as 3 direct hits stripped away its armor, plating and vented. Atmosphere into space. Captain Park watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Enemy formation is breaking apart, she reported. The Sark ships scattered like frightened animals, their elegant formation dissolving into chaos as commanders tried to escape the human assault. But there was nowhere to run. The human fleet had positioned itself to cover all escape routes. The battle was less a fight than an execution. Human destroyers hunted down fleeing Sark vessels with ruthless efficiency, while the battleships methodically destroyed the orbital installations the aliens had built around the conquered colony. Each explosion represented months of alien construction work reduced to expanding clouds of debris. On the planet's surface, Sark ground forces watched in horror as their fleet died above them. Colonel Rex, the planetary commander, activated emergency protocols and began evacuating essential personnel. The occupation had been a pleasant assignment until 30 minutes ago. Now it had become a death trap. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human flagship," reported the communications officer aboard the dying Predator. Commander Tor, bleeding from wounds caused by flying debris, authorized the connection. Admiral Stone's face appeared on the main screen, his expression carved from stone. "You have 10 minutes to evacuate all personnel from the planet's surface and surrounding space," Stone stated flatly. "After that, anything remaining in this system will be destroyed without further warning." The transmission cut off, leaving the Sark commander staring at a blank screen. The evacuation became a desperate race against time. Sark transport ships launched from the planet in all directions, carrying soldiers and equipment that had taken months to deploy. The human fleet watched silently as the alien forces fled, making no move to interfere with the withdrawal. True to his word, Admiral Stone waited exactly 10 minutes. Then the human fleet began its demonstration of what happened to those who occupied human worlds. Orbital bombardment reduced the alien installations to molten craters. The carefully constructed command centers, communication arrays, and defensive positions were systematically obliterated. Within 2 hours, the Proxima system was once again under human control. The Sark evacuation fleet limped toward the nearest Council base, carrying news that would shatter the post-victory euphoria. The report seemed impossible. Humanity had returned with a fleet that dwarfed anything the Council had seen before. As the last alien ship disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Stone stood before his fleet. "Signal to all ships," he commanded. "Phase 1 complete. Prepare for Phase 2. We have 11 more systems to liberate, and the galaxy is about to learn the price of underestimating humanity." The war of human vengeance had begun, and the aliens were about to discover they had celebrated far too soon. Asterisk emergency session of the Galactic Council. Nova Prime, 2 weeks after Proxima. Panic filled the council chambers as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Admiral Krynn's tentacles writhed in distress as she presented the latest intelligence to the emergency assembly. 17 systems have fallen in the past 10 days, she announced, her aquatic voice trembling with disbelief. A human fleet appears to be everywhere at once. Commander Vex slammed his clawed fist against his console. "How is this possible?" He roared. "We destroyed their fleet. We saw their worlds burn." The reptilian warrior's scales had lost their usual lustrous shine, dulled by the stress of watching his forces retreat system after system. Queen, Tala clicked her mandibles in rapid nervous patterns. The humans are not following standard warfare protocols, she buzzed through her translator. They attack without warning, destroy our forces, then vanish before reinforcements arrive. Her compound eyes reflected the red warning lights that now permanently illuminated the council chamber. The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. The human fleet the council had destroyed had been a decoy converted civilian vessels crewed by volunteers who had sacrificed themselves to maintain the deception. The real human military had been building in secret for decades, preparing for exactly this scenario. Dr. Nix, the council's xenobiologist, presented his revised analysis with shaking hands. We underestimated their capacity for long-term strategic planning, he admitted. While we celebrated victory, they were positioning assets throughout the galaxy. Their intelligence network is far more extensive than we realized. The holographic displays showed the scope of the human offensive. Strike forces appeared simultaneously in multiple sectors, hitting council installations with devastating precision. Shipyards, supply depots, and command centers were reduced to debris fields before defenders could mount effective resistance. What terrified the council most was the humans' tactical adaptation. Unlike the desperate colony defense forces they had previously faced, these human warriors fought with professional skill and overwhelming technological superiority. Their weapons punched through council shields, their armor shrugged off return fire, and their coordination was flawless. Admiral Stone's fleet had divided into multiple task forces, each capable of independent operation. The main battle group continued its systematic liberation of former human territory, while smaller units struck deep into council space, targeting infrastructure and supply lines. The aliens found themselves fighting a war on dozens of fronts simultaneously. Representative Dex from the crystalline, collective shared intelligence from his species' vast sensor network. The humans are not seeking conquest, he reported, his voice resonating with harmonic overtones. They are implementing what appears to be a systematic punishment campaign. Every species that participated in their suppression is being targeted proportionally. The Council's military leadership struggled to respond to the human strategy. Traditional fleet engagements were impossible because the humans rarely committed their full force to a single battle. They struck like lightning, destroyed their objectives, and withdrew before the Council could bring overwhelming numbers to bear. General Zarn of the warrior caste presented the military situation with brutal honesty. Our casualties exceed 40% across all participating fleets, he reported. Morale is collapsing as our forces retreat from system after system. The humans fight like they have nothing to lose. The observation was more accurate than Zarn realized. The human crews had volunteered for what many considered a suicide mission. They fought with the fury of a species that had lost everything and had nothing left but vengeance. Every battle was total war. Every engagement fought to complete victory or death. Council member after council member stood to report the same pattern. Human forces appearing without warning, devastating local defenses, then vanishing before substantial reinforcements could arrive. The hit-and-run tactics maximized damage while minimizing human casualties, gradually bleeding the Council's military strength. Commander Vex received an urgent communication from his homeworld's defense fleet. Sir, human forces have been detected entering the Theta sector, the transmission reported. They're heading directly for our core systems. The Sark military commander's face went pale beneath his scales as he realized the implications. Queen Tala's agitation reached critical levels. My species' colonies are being evacuated, she buzzed frantically. The humans are targeting civilian populations now. The accusation hung in the air until Dr. Nix corrected her analysis. Actually, the humans are specifically avoiding civilian casualties, he reported. They provide advance warning for evacuation and target only military and governmental installations. This suggests they are fighting a war of liberation rather than extermination. Admiral Kryn raised her voice above the growing chaos. We need immediate action. Every day we delay allows them to consolidate their gains. But the Council's response was paralyzed by the scope of the disaster. No one had planned for fighting an enemy that refused to follow conventional warfare rules. As the emergency session continued, reports arrived of human forces approaching the very heart of Council space. The war that had begun with alien celebration was rapidly becoming their nightmare, with no end in sight. The final confrontation at Nova Prime, the Galactic Council's capital world. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of the Defiance as the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nova Prime system. Before them lay the capital of the Galactic Council, protected by the largest concentration of alien military power in the galaxy. Orbital defense platforms surrounded the planet like a metallic shell, while over 2,000 warships from 12 different species waited in defensive formation. Sir, we're receiving multiple surrender offers, reported Captain Clark, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. The communications board lit up with transmissions from various Council species, each trying to negotiate separate peace terms. The unity that had once celebrated humanity's defeat was crumbling under the pressure of inevitable retribution. Stone studied the tactical display with cold calculation. Over the past month, the human fleet had systematically dismantled the Council's military infrastructure across the galaxy. Supply lines were severed, shipyards destroyed, and colonial garrisons either eliminated or forced to retreat. Now only the core systems remained, and the aliens' last hope lay in this final, desperate stand. Signal the fleet, Stone commanded. All ships maintain formation. Let's remind them what happens when you try to exterminate humanity. The 3,000 vessels of the human armada moved forward in perfect coordination, their weapons charging, for the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. On Nova Prime's surface, emergency evacuations continued as civilian populations fled toward underground shelters. The Council's leaders watched from their fortified command bunkers as long-range sensors tracked the approaching human fleet. The aliens who had celebrated humanity's destruction now faced the consequences of their premature victory party. Commander Vex, his forces reduced to a fraction of their original strength, made one final attempt at negotiation. Admiral Stone, his transmission crackled across the void. Surely we can reach an understanding. The galaxy is large enough for all our species to coexist peacefully. Stone's response was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring every alien in the system could hear his words. You had that chance when humanity first reached the stars, he replied, his voice carrying the weight of accumulated grief and rage. Instead, you chose to view us as a threat to be eliminated. Now you will learn the difference between humanity as neighbors and humanity as enemies. The battle began with a massive coordinated strike that lit up space brighter than the local star. Human plasma cannons, designed specifically to overwhelm Council defense systems, tore through energy shields and armor plating with devastating efficiency. The orbital platforms that had taken decades to construct were reduced to expanding debris clouds in minutes. The alien fleet tried to implement traditional battle tactics, forming defensive walls and attempting to bring superior numbers to bear. But the humans had learned from their earlier defeats, adapting their strategies to counter Council doctrine. Human destroyers punched holes in alien formations, while battleships delivered crushing firepower that no defense could withstand. Queen Tala's insectoid forces attempted a desperate flanking maneuver, but human fighter squadrons intercepted them with ruthless precision. The pilots who had trained in secret for years finally had their chance to demonstrate the superiority of human aerospace engineering. Alien fighters, designed for grace and efficiency, couldn't match the raw power and durability of human combat craft. As the battle raged, Admiral Kryn made a final plea to the human fleet. Please, her transmission begged, we acknowledge our mistake. Humanity deserves its place in the galactic community. We can negotiate reparations, territorial concessions, whatever justice demands. Stone's answer came not in words, but in actions. The human fleet pressed forward, systematically destroying every military installation in the system. The message was clear. This was not a negotiation or a traditional conquest. This was Judgment Day for species that had tried to commit genocide. Within 6 hours, the once mighty Council fleet was scattered wreckage drifting through space. The orbital defenses that had protected Nova Prime for centuries were reduced to metallic dust. The planet itself remained untouched the humans had. Precisely targeted only military installations, leaving civilian areas completely unharmed. As the smoke cleared, Admiral Stone transmitted his final message to the surviving alien governance. Humanity claims no territory beyond our original borders, he announced. We seek no tribute, no subjugation of your peoples. But understand this: never again will any species threaten human existence. This fleet will remain active, watching, waiting. Any act of aggression against humanity will be met with swift and total retaliation. The human fleet began withdrawing from Nova Prime, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed. The Council's power was broken, their military strength destroyed, but their populations were alive and unharmed. It was a demonstration of restraint that spoke volumes about humanity's true nature. The aliens had celebrated too soon, and their premature victory party had cost them everything. Now they would rebuild their civilizations with the knowledge that humanity was not extinct. It was watching from the darkness, ready to defend itself against any who would threaten human survival. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity endured. Asterisk.